So in this video, I would like to explain the accusative case in Russian. The accusative case is the fourth case that can express words differently than the previous three. The accusative is mainly used for direct object nouns or pronouns. We only use the accusative case in English with pronouns like saying me instead of I and him instead of he. Me and him are direct object pronouns, which I will not explain in this video because it's a different Russian topic, but I will give a general idea of what the accusative is for. The accusative is also used with the prepositions into and on when indicating motion towards something, and it also describes the state of a subject and has a circumstantial function. I will not be highlighting the smaller concepts in this video because it's something to keep for future videos. Plus, they're all based on the idea of direct objects, like in the questions what and whom. To understand all of these ideas, you first have to understand the concept of direct objects, and then you can learn them. The accusative also doesn't have new modifications because it's the first case that borrows endings from other cases, specifically the nominative and genitive. Generally, it's not going to be too difficult to remember the grammar because again, the endings are borrowed and therefore familiar. However, what's very vital about the accusative is the fact that direct objects, in this case nouns, are separated into two categories, animate and inanimate. Animate objects, or nouns, are alive and can move by themselves, like people and animals, but not plants. Inanimate objects, or nouns, are non-living objects that cannot move. The reason I'm saying this is because Russian creates two modification patterns for each type of object, meaning that the grammar of animate objects is different from inanimate objects. It's the only case that does that because it's the only one that works directly with objects. The most important element to understand about the accusative is animate and inanimate objects, because their grammar will be different. Still, it's the only topic I'll cover, and it will not be too difficult to remember its grammar because the endings of such nouns are simply borrowed from previous cases. The accusative answers the questions what and whom, which is different from asking of from what or of from whom. In the translator, what and whom look the same as they were in the genitive, but the accusative doesn't work with the prepositions of and from. Just because they have identical grammar, it doesn't mean that they're the same. Even though their grammar will be borrowed, it makes for different meanings, especially when plural. If we want to know whether a word is in the accusative, we have to ask these questions to see if they fit the context. If they do, the phrase is accusative. To understand how to modify nouns in the accusative, we have to know the gender of the noun we're working with, whether it's masculine, feminine, or neuter. In the singular form, if a masculine noun is inanimate, there is no change to the noun regardless of the ending, and staying the same as in the nominative, which is the dictionary form of nouns. If a masculine noun is animate and ends in a consonant, add a, which in this case borrows the ending from the genitive, and you will see examples on the way. If a masculine noun is animate and ends in i kratkoye, replace it with ya, which again borrows the ending from the genitive. If a masculine noun is animate and ends in the mягкий знак, also replace it with ya. If a feminine noun ends in a, replace it with u. If it ends with ya, replace it with you. If it ends in the mягкий знак, there is no change at all. What's important about feminine nouns in the accusative is that it doesn't matter if a feminine noun is animate or inanimate. The grammar is the same for all feminine nouns, so there is no need to distinguish if a feminine noun is animate or inanimate. With neuter nouns, it's even simpler. A neuter word, by definition, is something that's always objective. Therefore, it's never alive, because if it was, it would not be an object. Categorically, all neuter nouns in Russian are inanimate by default, and they do not require any change, regardless of their endings. This is how you modify nouns in the singular form of the accusative. The plural form, however, is very simple because it borrows the exact endings from the nominative and genitive. We only need to know if an object, or noun, is animate or inanimate. In the plural form, if a noun is inanimate, it has the grammatical endings as in the nominative. If a noun is animate, it has the grammatical endings as in the genitive. Simply put, if a noun is not alive, it's in the nominative, and if it is alive, it's in the genitive. This is how you modify nouns in the plural form of the accusative. And to make learning simple, most of the phrases that you'll see will have the same structure and an object that is directly shown in a phrase, like subject-verb-object, along with an indicator that shows if the object is animate or inanimate. Here we have the phrases I see a table and I see tables, which are Я вижу стол and Я вижу столи. These phrases are accusative because they show a direct object noun. We know it's accusative because we can ask, I see what? I see a table or tables. Я вижу чего? Я вижу стол or столи. In this case, we have an inanimate masculine noun stol, which doesn't change, and therefore we keep its form as in the nominative, both in the singular and plural. Because we know that inanimate masculine nouns don't change form, or rather keep a dictionary form, the same concept can be shown with any ending, like Я вижу музеи or музеи, ending in i краткое, and Я вижу словарь or словари, ending in the мягкий знак. It doesn't matter that these masculine nouns have different endings because they're all inanimate, a museum and a dictionary. Their grammar simply stays as in the nominative. However, if these objects become animate, the grammar will change to that of the genitive. Here, we have an animate masculine noun that ends in a consonant. Я вижу брата and Я вижу братьев. These phrases are accusative because we can ask, I see whom? I see a brother or brothers. Я вижу кого? Я вижу брата or братьев. In this case, we have an animate masculine noun brat, which applies an a when singular and ov when plural. In this case, however, brat is an irregular noun, so the ending is somewhat different. Nonetheless, the grammar of the phrases is taken from the genitive, because the object is animate, a brother. The same concept can be applied to a name, like saying, Я вижу Адама. This phrase is accusative because by asking, I see whom, we have an answer. Я вижу кого? Я вижу Адама. Adam is an animate and living object, so the genitive grammar takes over. Plus, the names of people cannot be pluralized, so the ending is simply a. Here, we have an animate masculine noun that ends in i краткое. Я вижу злодея and Я вижу злодеев. Злодей ends in i краткое, so we change it to ya when singular and to yev when plural. Because zlodей is animate and living, the genitive grammar takes over. Here, we have an animate masculine noun that ends in the мягкий знак. Я вижу гостя and Я вижу гостей. Гость ends in the мягкий знак, so we change it to ya when singular and to ей when plural. Because гость is animate and living, the genitive grammar takes over. Now, let's work with feminine objects, which is easier because they all follow the same grammar, regardless of whether they're animate or inanimate. Here, we have an inanimate feminine noun that ends in a. Я вижу машину and Я вижу машины. Машина ends in a, so we change it to u when singular, but because it's inanimate, it takes the nominative form when plural, which is u. Here, we have an inanimate feminine noun that ends in ya. Я вижу деревню and Я вижу деревни. Деревня ends in ya, so we change it to u when singular, but because it's inanimate, it takes the nominative form when plural, which is i. Here, we have an inanimate feminine noun that ends in the мягкий знак. Я вижу ночь and Я вижу ночи. Ночь ends in the мягкий знак, so we don't change it when singular, and because it's inanimate, it takes the nominative form when plural, which is i. Here, we have an animate feminine name that ends in a. Я вижу Ему. Emma ends in a, so we change it to u because the names of people can only be singular. Here, we have an animate feminine noun that ends in ya. Я вижу змею and Я вижу змеи. Змея ends in ya, so we change it to you when singular, but because it's animate, it takes the genitive form when plural, which is zmei, with i kratkoye. Here, we have an animate feminine noun that ends in the mягкий знак. Я вижу мать, and я вижу матерей. Мать ends in the мягкий знак, so we don't change it when singular, but because it's an irregular verb, we add an irregular yerei ending, still taken from the genitive. Here, we have a neuter noun that ends in ye. Я вижу здание, and я вижу здания. Zdanie ends in ye, so we don't change it when singular and change it to ya when plural. Zdanie is a neuter noun, so it's inanimate by default, automatically taking the nominative form, as with any neuter noun. Here, we have a neuter noun that ends in o. Я вижу лицо, and я вижу лица. Лицо ends in o, so we don't change it when singular and change it to a when plural. Лицо is once again a neuter noun. It's inanimate by default, and it automatically takes the nominative form. Overall, this is how the accusative case works in Russian. As I said in the beginning, the accusative also has additional functions, but I decided to not cover them because they require more attention, which will be explained in future videos. In this video, I simply covered the primary function of the accusative, animate and inanimate direct objects. Once you've understood this concept, understanding its base ideas will be much simpler.